everybody. I'm delighted to see you all, and I'm very happy that you're interested in joining us here in Cork. I'm calling today from my office in the campus on UCC, so you'll get a small view here in the background of what it looks like. I left my office here on the 12th of March, and today is my first day back. And as I walked into my office, I remembered why I came to work here just 4 years ago, because it is such a beautiful campus and such a lovely place to be in, and I realize how much I've missed it over the last 10 weeks. I am a professor of economics. I'm specialized in agriculture and food business is one of the strengths we have here in the business school in Cork, along with a large number of programs that I know you're all familiar with because you have made an application to join us. This is a very old university, over 200 years old, with a long history of education and business. We've produced our first business graduate over 100 years ago, and amongst our graduates and alumni now we can claim CEOs of major international companies, leaders, political leaders, non-government leaders right across Ireland and the world. So we're very proud of our alumni. We have a very long history, and we make a very deep impact in business and society with the graduates we produce. Cork is a very welcoming place to live and to visit. Last year we had almost 700 postgraduate students from a broad range of nationalities, and our feedback has been very positive in terms of the time they've spent here. People enjoy various aspects of studying here, including the work placement and work project opportunities that my colleagues will talk to you about shortly. While there's a long history of business education here in UCC, CUBS, Cork University Business School, was officially established just 5 years ago. And since then, we've really gone from strength to strength. We've increased our number of postgraduate students studying with us by 40% over that period. We've increased our number of program offerings. And, you know, as I've said, we get very positive feedback from our students and very good employment opportunities arising from their studies here. So I hope I'll be in a position to see you personally on the campus this autumn. My colleagues will explain to you how things are happening and working in this exceptional period that we're living in. But we hope to get back to as close to as normal an experience as possible for our students and continue to deliver a high quality student living and studying experience here in Cork. So thank you very much for your interest in studying with us in Cork, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. I'll hand you back to Trish.
Thank you very much, Thea. I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, who's our Vice Dean of Internationalization and External Engagement, Professor Eleanor Doyle.
I'd like to speak to you briefly about the opportunities in Ireland, such as they are now, in the context of, I guess, a non-COVID world, and then imagining what impacts this virus will have on our opportunities. So I will speak briefly about those opportunities, and my comments, just on the next slide, relate to generally 4 main areas. I will say a little bit about the choices that you will have if you complete a postgraduate degree, a master's with us. I provide you with some information about the businesses where we have direct and ongoing engagements here locally. And even though the engagements may be local, many of our engagements are with international companies. And I'll give you some information on who those companies are and the nature of our engagements. I will say a little about employability supports as they're available to all of our students here, and particularly master's students in terms of our career service. And I will finish up briefly with some comments on research options here at Cork University Business School. So starting then with the choices that face you now. We appreciate that it's a strange time to have to make choices about postgraduate options. But I guess there are never there are periods where that's more or less easy. And right now, we're living through very interesting implications in terms of what we should all be doing next, what's required of us, how we will work. And I guess this experience will actually help us in terms of dealing with uncertainty throughout our careers from here and all aspects of our lives, really. So you're facing that choice now of whether or not to do a postgraduate program. And I guess the next speaker, my colleague, Professor Dave Salmon, will provide some background that may be more useful for you as you think about what the nature of the experience here in Cork University Business School will be. What I would like you to imagine, if you don't mind, for a few minutes, is what might be open for you should you complete your degree. So imagine you in a year or more's time, where you've got a master's degree from CUBS, and think about, well, what might the choices be? What choices might be open for you then? So by way of context then, in terms of the next slide, I can provide you with some, if you like, background information about the general business environment here in Ireland. If you've been involved in looking and examining the structure of our economy, you will know probably, I hope, at this stage that Ireland has been very, very successful in attracting some of the largest, most successful international companies. So for example, I need to take off my glasses myself, we have some of the leading companies across a number of different sectors, and these sectors have been targeted by our Industrial Development Agency over 30, 40, 50, they're actually 70 years old this year. But the Industrial Development Agency targets in a very focused way the leading international companies for them to consider whether Ireland makes sense for them. So far we're very successful. 9 of the top 10 US technology companies operate with subsidiaries in Ireland. All of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies have operations in Ireland, and that is one of the key growth sectors across life sciences generally, where Ireland is competing very strongly. Top 5 global software companies have a strong presence. 14 of the top 15 medical tech companies, 8 of the top industrial automation companies, and 8 of the top 10 financial services companies. So Ireland has managed to really punch above its weight, given its relatively small size, but it has quite an important economic footprint across all of those leading and technology intensive sectors of the international economy. So Ireland's location in terms of offering routes into Europe makes it particularly interesting for a lot of those leading international companies. So across those companies, there are about 1,500 of the internationally competitive companies with subsidiaries in Ireland, and they generate about 250,000 jobs, which is substantial in an economy like ours. So the overall employment in Ireland is about 2.5 million people. So we can move on to the next slide, and I can provide you with a bit more by way of, if you like, a UCC, a university-focused consideration of the specific companies that across the university we have different types of industry engagements with. So this again provides a sectoral view for you, from engineering into pharma, into financial services, across ICT, into food, as Thea has mentioned already, and marine and energy. And essentially, while you see there, you know, a number of different companies, industrial engagement is a key part of the requirements of a modern university in terms of working with business, alongside business in very different ways. So in the business school, for example, certainly at undergraduate level, and for a number of our postgrad programs, placement opportunities with these and other partners are central to the education experience. At postgrad level, we pride ourselves in terms of offering different types of projects and research possibilities some individual, some group, and a number of these companies here, depending on the nature of the engagements, will come and look for our students to work on problems for them. So that gives you, if you like, a picture of the overall industrial engagement profile of the university as it exists right now. In the next slide, I decided to pull out some more specific examples of partnerships that are really central to how we deliver our mission in the business school. And in trying to identify across the various relationships we have, these ones stand out. So where our strengths would really exist is across accounting and consultancy organizations. So the big international brand names that you may know, and some of the smaller ones are key in terms of the businesses with which we engage. Across the food industry, we have a number of very important engagements, all the way through from ingredients companies to retailers, Aldi, manufacturers, PepsiCo, and so on. And there are interesting things happening in food in particular, and across the other industries also, that allow us to look at sustainability, for example, green agendas, responsible, ethical approaches in business is an important theme there. Finance, fintech, and tech would be areas where we're very strong, and we are developing strong partnerships. Biopharma, a lot of our work is interdisciplinary, and clearly any large tech business requires a lot of various types of people input, and also in local professional services. So if you're interested, you can follow up some of those, and they offer, if you like, a route to become more familiar with how we do our business here in CUBS. Okay, in the next slide, we'll move on to some of the supports that are available here in the business school and through our central careers service of the university. Employability is a key focus of our programs in terms of, in my own case as an economist, many of our students are not looking for jobs as economists. However, the skill base that you learn as an economist or as in any of the other disciplines in the university, we're interested in terms of developing the skills for which different career opportunities will open up for you over your lifetime in possibly different careers. But in the transition from your master's out into the world of employment, there are a number of supports that are available, and the UCC Careers Office offers, even now under these restrictions, a number of supports for students. They offer one-to-one consultations remotely at the moment, helping students in terms of making that transition from university into employment. So that would be needs-based, and they work with individuals on that. They have a number of supports in their toolkit in terms of, as you might expect, updating and putting a very focused CV together. Assistance in writing cover letters for employment opportunities, interview preparation, assessment preparation of various types, and how to improve the applications process from your perspective. In the next slide, I also wanted to just bring your attention to the fact that as a university and as a business school with over 100 years of students that we have been graduating, there is a strong alumni network that will be there to support and provide network for you as a graduate of our business school. And I finally wanted to say a few words, I hope I'm okay on time, in relation to the research that we conduct here at the business school. We've aligned our research with the national priorities, and there is an Innovation 2000 strategy document which outlines what the strategy for the economy should be. And the main building blocks of that are across ICT, health and well-being, food, services, manufacturing, and energy and climate, with increasing evidence of that footprint. And in terms of what we do in CUBS, we have a number of different research centres. So there are a number of these different approaches where clusters of interested academic colleagues work together on certain research themes. And as of now, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, we have 12 strong research clusters organised in areas as varied as cooperative studies, investment research, policy studies, sports, economics and law, resilience for business continuity, which has come into its own given the current circumstances, sustainable livelihoods, financial services, global competitiveness, risk and compliance, health information systems, human resources, and Spatial and Regional Economics Research Centre. So for those of you who may be thinking that yes, employability is a possibility, there may also be research opportunities post-masters that you may decide are a useful strategy for your own career development. But irrespective of that, skills, research skills, which are emphasized across our programs, are very useful and in demand in terms of employability also. So in brief, I think that's a very short guideline in terms of the footprint of CUBS around the opportunities that may be open to you should you choose to take a master's with us. And we will follow up, I think, on more specifics in the Q&A. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eleanor, for a very engaging and informative presentation and showing everybody on the call here what their future could look like if they take a postgraduate program here at CUBS in UCC. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, who is the Vice Dean of Graduate Studies in CUBS, Professor Dave Salmon.
I'm going to take a short few minutes just to speak to you about, I suppose, that all-important consideration around the learning experience that perhaps will face you and be important to you in terms of making your decision for the forthcoming academic year. There is a theme to the work that we have been doing in the business school over the last weeks and months in terms of preparing for next year, and that is, as much as is possible, trying to ensure that your learning experience is the best it can be, and in particular very conscious of the on-campus learning experience. That is a huge factor in why students decide to study internationally in another country. When we talk maybe a little bit later in the Q&A, we fully appreciate that there is a difference between being in country, being on campus, and indeed being in the classroom, however that might be facilitated. So I'm hoping that the next few minutes will prove useful for you in terms of where we are in terms of our plans and maybe our design work that we're doing presently. So we might move to the next slide. Just to give you a quick overview, I'm presenting perhaps maybe a sense of the demand that we've had, as was covered very effectively by Professor Thea Hennessy, our Dean. And I'm showing a figure here of 614, which would have been the number of postgrad taught master's students that we currently have registered this year. So it wouldn't include our research master's cohort. Just to say that, as you can see, we take a very, very diverse group of students that enroll with us. Indeed, we perhaps have as many international students as we have domestic or Irish students. And I think that's a really, really good indication of how internationalized our cohort of postgrads are, but also the value that exists for the international stage in terms of the curriculum that we deliver. We also have a very interesting gender balance in that it's almost a 50-50 split between the cohort that we have this year. So again, a really, really good illustration of maybe the diversity that we have on campus in terms of the portfolio of various different programs. If I maybe mention very quickly that this year has been a really, really tough year. People use maybe descriptors like our new normal or our now normal. But whatever it is, I suppose we are all faced with significant challenges. I don't think any of us would be delivering a webinar under normal circumstances. But to be fair, we have to, I suppose, move beyond these current challenges and try and design a future for us that suggests that we don't have to maybe postpone any of our decisions. And a good indicator for us to date has been the number of offers that have been accepted by both the Irish and international applicant community at large. So if I was to say to you that at this particular point this year compared to the same point last year, we have 21% increase in the number of accepted offers. And that total number for this year is just over 1,100. So again, a lot of applicants very interested, and a lot of students very interested in pursuing their postgrad education with us in CUBS next year. And hopefully, you know, what we talk about today and what you see today can help you with those decisions as you progress. So if we move to the next slide, you know, we can't deny, people might appreciate this picture is familiar, and they may be familiar with this picture. It actually comes from our postgraduate prospectus brochure. I think it's quite revealing when we see this particular visual that the public health guidelines, and in particular the current guideline in Ireland of this 2-meter social distancing rule, does create an impact. It perhaps makes on-campus life more challenging for everybody, for those who want to provide top quality services in various different facilities, to indeed staff and the way the staff want to have engagement and interaction and relationships with students, and indeed, as you can see, perhaps quite starkly in this picture, between the students themselves. But it's not so much something that we should be defeated by. It is more something that we need to be able to design our way through. There's no doubt when we're faced with such a global pandemic and the current 2-meter social distancing within Ireland, it does suggest that we have to be quite creative and very, very inventive in terms of how we go about planning our learning experience. If I might just move to the next addition to this slide, I think a lot of the principles that have informed our work to date has in fact been you the applicant, you the prospective student. And I think there's a sense that we're trying to use a principle of you with us. So the well-being of students, the well-being of staff is forefront in our minds for the university as a whole. But really important that we think about you and your journey when you decide to take that journey up with us. Just very quickly, we might move to the next slide, and it gives a really good kind of high-level overview of the learning experience and how we see it currently. I think it's fair to say, and I know my colleagues who aren't even on this call would agree, that a lot of the work we've been doing over the last weeks and months in terms of preparing for next year are probably allowing us and affording us the opportunity to do things that we perhaps would not have ever been given the opportunity to do. So our learning experience has always been good in our eyes. The quality of it has always been good. The things we do inside and outside the classroom have always been good in the, let's say, old normal. But now as we progress into this new way of doing, this new way of being, this new way of learning, we're actually appreciating that we can perhaps improve the engagement that we offer, the challenge that we offer, and indeed the rewards that you yourself will get from a program. So again, we're trying to use those 3 core pillars to perhaps inform all of the decisions. And one little piece that I might just suggest very quickly is there is no doubt that the timetable that we will be able to produce for the next academic year, kicking off in September the 28th, as maybe the date is now within the university. It's actually a better designed timetable for you, the student, than it perhaps would ever have been where we were using all of the stock as we currently used it. So I think, again, really good illustration of the opportunities that we ourselves are actually affording to us, which we can then pass on to you. Just to maybe progress through to the next slide, and I'll take each one of these areas separately. So in terms of engaging, we appreciate that people look to do a postgrad and a taught postgrad because they want to improve and enhance their career prospects. I think Professor Eleanor Doyle has given a really nice overview of what is available regionally, nationally, and indeed internationally for those who actually complete a postgraduate degree. One of our challenges, as I say, in the current situation is how much of this on-campus activity we can offer to you in terms of content delivery, so in terms of lectures. So presently and currently, under the 2-meter social distancing guideline, we are actually planning and working towards 1/3 of your lectures being delivered on campus. So you would hopefully, based on our current work, be allocated 8 hours for a particular module in person on campus, and then 8 hours live online, and then perhaps 8 hours pre-recorded. But again, there's variability on how the online piece might work in terms of a blended model. The most important element for us is securing the maximum amount of on-campus content delivery that we can. Appreciating again that the 2-meter social distancing is our current guideline, and you can imagine that presents a challenge where not that many people can be in a room as would normally have been the case. So we're working really hard to ensure that we maximize that on-campus in-person delivery. If we move to the next slide, we're moving to this concept of challenging. Again, reflecting a lot on the commentary provided by Professor Doyle, we pride ourselves on ensuring that we offer a real-world, hands-on, and indeed work-ready curriculum. We appreciate that it is aligned with industry needs, and I think no better is that showcased than in the kind of 3rd semester of a taught postgraduate program, where there is a very, very engaged and immersive applied piece of research work, where you will perhaps be involved in solving or addressing or helping to solve real-world problems for real industry entities. Again, a lot of what we deliver, we believe, sets you up for the global stage. So again, it's very refreshing always to hear how our graduates have further moved beyond Cork in their postgraduate lives and have done some really fantastic work, both back in their own home countries, but again, right throughout the world in terms of the diverse range of roles, organizations, sectors, sizes, types that they work in. If we move again just to our final element of that Venn diagram, the idea of it being rewarding. Again, echoing the ongoing support and touch points that we need to provide to our postgrad student cohort and indeed all students for your professional development. There is no doubt that the way in which we would provide those professional development supports will change. Again, a massive opportunity space for us as a university and as a business school to reimagine how it is we might offer those professional development touch points. We're very, I suppose, aware that relationship building and networking is central to everybody's professional development, and to afford you the opportunity to do that with industry partners, academics, and indeed your peers is extremely important. So again, throughout the university and within the school, we're working very hard on those particular areas. If we move to the next slide, I think it's time for me to thank you. I know I'll probably be answering 1 or 2 questions as we go, and just to hand back to Trish, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave, for that, for showing our participants what the vision for the academic year 2021 will look like. We were going to move on to the next session now, which is our Q&A session, where our panel will be answering a lot of your questions. Before I start, I would just like to remind everybody to mute their microphones if they haven't done it, and to turn off their video as well. So for this section, I'd firstly also like to thank everybody who sent in all their questions and the feedback we received. We really appreciate that. Now, due to time constraints, we can't go through all the questions, so we picked out 6 different areas that were most pertinent. So we have program delivery, which Professor David Salmon will be answering questions on, the academic tuition and fees, which Tarek will be answering questions on, deferrals and deposits, I'll answer those questions myself. We have placement and job opportunities. Professor Eleanor Doyle will be answering your queries on that area. Travel and accommodation, we will have Tarek answering questions there, and our international manager, Vida Hay, will be answering questions on the visa questions that you have sent in for us. So just to start off, we're going to bring Professor David Salmon back in here, and if we move to the next slide, we can have a look at the first question. So Dave, the question we have first here is, what efforts are the school putting in place to ensure safety for students and staff?
Thanks, Trish. As I maybe suggested a little earlier, we are being guided very much by the public health advice of the government and our health service executive. And indeed, as a lot of people on the call might be aware, Ireland is in a very improved situation in terms of how we've been handling the COVID-19 crisis. I suppose the well-being of both staff and students is our forefront consideration and concern. There is continuous work, and as people can appreciate over the next couple of weeks, an awful lot more will change, perhaps for the better. And again, it allows us to do even more. But I think the big thing at the moment is our on-campus activity has to be guided by the 2-meter social distancing rule. So I think that's one of the big considerations that we're taking on board. It's not appropriate for us to unfortunately have as many people in classrooms as would have normally been the case in a pre-COVID world. So everything we do is being guided by the well-being and safety of both our staff and our students.
Thanks, Dave. The next question is, recently we got an update from UCC saying that the current academic year will have a blended class approach. So could you provide us with an official statement explaining how this blended system is going to work? And there was a second just addendum to that question is, and we had a few questions in around this, so we can answer that. I've included this question here to provide this written statement to my loan provider, as they're not willing to provide a loan if it's an online session.
Yeah, thanks, Trish. So it's a very interesting question, and obviously, again, most people will appreciate that it's a very fluid situation. As the public health situation around COVID-19 improves, so too does our ability to do more in terms of the student learning experience happening on campus. So for now, we're planning within the guidelines that we can. I've presented a little visual here that I hope people will find useful. Useful from the perspective that you are probably aware that we run our postgrads for the most part across 3 semesters. Semester 1 is due to commence on September the 28th. Our semesters are normally 12 weeks long. So what you see on this picture are 6 rows of blocks that are 12 long. So it's saying here's 6 blocks, which would stand for 6 modules over 12 weeks. That's the length of time that you would be engaged in content that is being delivered to you. So it covers just the delivery piece, not the self-directed study, not the other parts of that learning experience, like doing projects in groups or individually, etc. And where our thinking is right now is that for our blended model, we are trying to always maximize the amount of on-campus time. So we're seeing here, if you look at it through the stage of weeks, about 1/3 or 4 weeks of your 12-week semester 1 experience, for example, we are planning for in-person on campus, so delivery in a lecture room with social distancing. Currently that is 2 meters. Just to give people an understanding of that, for a room that might actually have a capacity normally of 400, you are looking at putting 80 into that room. So that gives you a sense of what 2 meter social distancing is the consideration that is when you're planning. And then on the online piece, again, for direct content delivery, in terms of the lecture content, we are hoping for, again, a third to be live online, and then a third of the material may in fact be delivered in a pre-recorded fashion. All content is being recorded. So if you're in a situation where you're unable to be in class on a particular day, where there is an on-campus in-person session taking place, it will also be recorded, so you're not in any way being displaced for whatever reason. And hopefully people will find that particular visual digestible. So we're trying in as much as is possible to maximize that in-person on-campus experience as part of the direct content delivery as part of our blended model.
Perfect, thanks Dave. Just in relation to the loan provider, I'll just follow up with that. Tarek will be emailing all offer holders after the webinar to confirm that all our programs are blended, and that will be in email format. The final question here, I think you might have answered already as part of the second question, Dave, just in relation to how many days, weeks or months will be online and how many are face-to-face. Just if you wanted to add on anything onto that for what you had already. Yeah.
And it's just to say that we traditionally, over the 12 months of our research programs, or our master's programs more generally, we will have 3 semesters. The first 2 are the semesters where a lot of the taught content is delivered. So the picture I'm showing here is the picture we're planning for semester 1. So that first semester starting on the 28th of September. Everybody hopes that in semester 2, the situation improves further. And indeed, by the time we get to semester 3, which is the applied research project, this time next year, if you will, that the situation has improved even further again. So taking a positive outlook, we will always be maximizing that on-campus learning experience and the delivery on campus. And maybe just to say as well that this is very much about the delivery piece. Indeed, depending on what the public health advice is and how UCC as a university translates that, students' opportunity to be on campus is also another dimension to that learning experience. So it's not all about what happens within the classroom. There's also the other incidental learning that happens when you are actually immersed in the social experience. So again, hopefully that would answer people's questions. We're doing as much as we can with the student learning experience to the forefront of our mind.
So we are going to look at the next section, and this one is around I can talk around the deposits and deferrals. So we had a few questions coming in relation to whether you can defer your place or whether you can get your deposit back. So we might just move on to that next slide around deposits and deferrals, because we've just started talking about that. The question is, I'd like to defer my offer. What is the process? So you can defer your offer. Just one thing to note, you need to have a full offer to be eligible for a deferral. We don't offer deferrals on conditional offers. If you want to defer your place, you can email international@ucc.ie and they'll process your request. We have a limited number of deferrals on each of our programs. So if our deferral list is full, there is no problem. You can just apply again when the application process opens in November for the following year. So the next question there is, if I defer my place to next year, will the course structure, the class headcount and tuition fees remain the same? So I'm going to go through each of those. So the course structure, we're not planning on making any huge changes to the course structure. Each year program directors will make maybe minor changes to the module. I'm quite proud to say that CUBS is very agile and we have very strong links with industry. So if industry come to us and are looking for a particular skill for our graduates, we'll incorporate that into the curriculum to ensure that you are more work ready and more employable as soon as you finish your program. The class headcount then changes every year. It just depends on how many students apply for the program. and how many accept in any 1 year. And the final part of that is the tuition fees. Will they remain the same? So our tuition fees for this year are set for 2021, but we don't have our tuition fees set yet for the 21-22 academic year. So we're going to look at deposit refunds now. I'd like to know whether the deposit of €1,000, if paid to University College Cork, will be refunded to me if I'm not in a position to produce my undergraduate degree certificate and complete the visa processing within the stipulated time due to the unfavourable circumstances effectuated by COVID-19. So there's a few parts to that. So again, with a deposit of €1,000, if you don't meet any of the conditions of your offer, so if you don't get, for example, a second class honours grade 2 or grade 1, or you don't meet the conditions of your English language, your deposit is automatically refunded to you. If you can't travel due to COVID-19 or it's impacted your ability to actually come to UCC, in the first instance, if possible, you should apply for a deferral. If you decide to apply for your deposit back, again, the same process as for the deferral. You will email international@ucc.ie and your application to get a refund of the deposit is assessed on a case-by-case basis. So those are the main questions that came in around the deposits and deferrals. If we could just maybe go back one slide, we might have skipped the academic tuition and fees. So I'm going to bring Tarek back in here again to answer these questions. The first question there is, Tarek, can I pay the tuition fee in installments due to COVID-19?
This is a very good question and very common question. But we need to understand why, unfortunately, it's not possible. We don't have installments in place for a tuition fee. And this is mainly due to the government rules. This is the visa office rules, unfortunately. You have to pay the full tuition fee before you start the course. So depending on the country you're applying from, normally you pay a deposit of €6,000 up to 50% of your tuition fee before you apply for your visa. And then before you start your course, you have to pay the remaining balance so you can join us here in Cork. As I said, again, this is not a university rule, but unfortunately this is immigration rule, and we are obliged to comply with these rules. Next question, please.
Thanks, Tarek. As the banks are closed in India, students are having a delay in getting their bank loan. What should I do?
Yeah, well, the good news, what we heard from India, and probably my colleague Vedihi is here with us on the call. She might help me answer this. We believe that the lockdown has been lifted, and the banks are in operation right now. But having said that, nothing is stopping you from applying for visa. The visa office is opening by the end of the month, but I think around the 20th of the month. You can still submit your application online and gather your visa documents. So that, as I said, this cannot stop you from proceeding with the visa procedure, which takes up to 8 weeks to obtain a visa from India.
Thanks, Tarek. So the final question around academic tuition and fees. In the case of students needing to avail of online classes, does UCC provide any fee concession?
Okay, there will be no reduction in fees, and the reason why, because the quality and of the qualifications you are paying for will not be compromised because of the teaching and learning methods measures we are putting in place. All I can assure you that no student will be disadvantaged. Like, you will receive the same quality of qualification that any other student from previous years.
I'm going to bring in Professor Eleanor Doyle again to answer these queries around placement and job opportunities. So Eleanor, the first question here is, what effect is COVID-19 likely to have on the Irish economy and job market? and what trends might we see in the future?
That now is a very dangerous question to ask me, Trish, because it's the kind of question that we might spend a couple of hours discussing in a class. That being said, what we can already see the effects on the economy in terms of what we're told about the impact on GDP. So that broad measure of output, estimates are putting at the moment the impact anywhere between 7 and 11% is what I've seen out there in terms of the reports. The job market situation right now, it has not actually been as bad as people might have been expecting in any of the big internationally focused companies. And if you think about it, the demand for ICT, for tech support has probably gone up as a result of so many of us requiring to work from home. All of our big pharma is reporting to us that demand has gone up again for obvious reasons. The real impact that we feel locally and as the lockdown, as it's called, seems to be opening up for us here increasingly. The big impact is on the small and medium sector, the retail, the services, the face-to-face transactions that really are compromised or eliminated by this 2-meter rule. So that's kind of where we are now. In terms of the broader job market, if you have a look at the jobs that are on the job lists as they're appearing, or if you look at LinkedIn in terms of the roles that are being recruited, you still see quite robust demand for, I guess, anything really in the digital space. So digital marketing, cloud computing, cybersecurity, development, different roles in biotech. And while I've seen those, I can't help but imagine if those type of tech roles are being recruited, well, then they need the back office support in terms of HR, in terms of business analysis, business intelligence. And I think our research skills piece are quite in demand when you actually break down those job requirements when you see the postings. Trends might be in the future. I think a lot depends on this, whether a second wave is going to appear or not. The OECD has done some interesting work and forecasts for a broad range of countries in terms of their expectations about what those impacts might be. But I would say in terms of the Irish economy, to have something very concrete to look back at, coming out of the last recession, Ireland did extremely well given what people's fears were at the time. I remember the last recession in Ireland was both, if you like, a standard recession and a financial crisis all coming together. And even with those joint problems, the economy actually rebounded much faster than a lot of my pessimistic economist forecaster colleagues might have thought. So I'd be quite optimistic on that, but my optimism is entirely subjective.
Thank you, Eleanor. The next question is, would I be eligible for a 2-year stay back option with the change in academic year start?
Yeah, well, thankfully we've got confirmation from the Irish Department of Justice on this, and I think it was Tariq who was really working on this for us. We can clearly state that as long as a student has a blended offering and has face-to-face contact in the way that we've envisaged program structure, there is no difficulty in terms of the 2-year stay-back visa. That's our current understanding.
Perfect. Thank you, Eleanor. And the final question, I intend to return to work in my home country after the course. Am I allowed to undertake my research project in my home country?
Okay, in theory, that is a possibility. However, in some programs, the research project takes a group nature. So it's an additional layer of complexity in terms of building that into requirements. Right now, I think we would be open to those sorts of opportunities, but I really think they would have to be addressed on a program-specific nature with your program director. And if there are a team of people involved, that just becomes a bit more tricky. So in theory, yes. However, we need a bit more information in order to qualify that yes.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Eleanor. We're going to move on to the next section now, which is travel and accommodation. And I'm going to bring my colleague Tariq back in here to answer these questions. So the first question we have in is, what support would the university provide in terms of accommodation services for international students?
Absolutely, Trish. Thank you for this question. Yeah, there is existing support. There is a robust support here in UCC. We have a dedicated department just to help our students obtain or secure suitable accommodation. So if you're talking about accommodation here in UCC, there are three types. There is the on-campus accommodation, which is owned by UCC. There is another type, which is off-campus accommodation. It's not owned by the UCC, however, it's been vetted by UCC. And there is the private rental market. So the great thing that probably a lot of students don't realize is that our student residential services offer help and will assist every student, regardless whether they want to stay on campus or they want to stay off campus. The first thing, the main question that we always receive is in relation to on-campus accommodation. As you all know, at this stage, that on-campus accommodation is reserved for our undergraduate students. There is a lottery-based system whereby we can take on some of our postgrad students. However, this does not mean that there is no availability elsewhere. So what I suggest for all our students is to contact us, to contact our student residential services to obtain information. There's a lot of information on our website. We have a team here at Cork University Business School whereby we can connect you with our alumni network. We can also connect you with the prospective students from your own region. The bottom line, we have never had a student going back home because they could not obtain a suitable accommodation, or so this has never happened. So you will receive all the support necessary to get the accommodation on time.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Tarek. The final question here is, would I be required to self-quarantine myself when I travel to Cork?
Yes, well, as it stands, you will be required to self-quarantine yourself for a period of 2 weeks before you start. At the moment, the academic leadership at the university are working very hard to devise a plan on how this will work out. But in the meantime, I would like you to send your request to a Student Residential Services Office. This information is actually on your offer letter, at the bottom of your offer letter. There is an email there as well. So it's just for us to understand the volume of students requiring assistance.
I'm going to bring my colleague Vedahe in here to answer the questions on visa. So Vedahe, the first question here is, where can I find a checklist for student visas to Ireland?
We're of course joined by students from across geographies right now. So I recommend the starting point for all international students to be the INIS and the DFA website, and you'll find the links of the website on the slide itself. We've enclosed it for your reference, and the details of all the procedure, the document checklist you have to keep at hand. Basis the country you're traveling from, you can find them here. So you just have to look for the country you're coming from to Ireland, and you'll find the documents there. And just an added note, as far as the process goes, you're required to fill out an online application. And then once the VFS office opens in your city, you're required to carry your documents as per instructions and arrive at the VFS office to submit your documents and complete your biometric. So essentially the whole purpose of VFS office is to complete your biometric. As a side note, I know it's not part of the question, but I just thought it's important to mention it as far as visa is concerned. I would recommend if you could also check if there's a VFS check and verify option in your country, which will enable you to process the application slightly more seamlessly and possibly even faster. It's a new service being provided, so do check it out, and there may just be a minimum cost to the service attached. So yeah.
Great, thank you for the update on that new service as well. The next question is, as lockdown has been extended, I am unable to obtain all the documents required for a visa application. What should I do?
It has certainly been rather anxious period, and I know that for all students and parents. And the reassurance that we can provide, and in fact, the visa offices and the embassies acknowledge at this stage is how difficult it has been for students to procure all necessary documents. I'd probably recommend to assess the timelines of application and work towards them. In fact, in the upcoming slides, my colleagues and I will be highlighting an indicative roadmap with some timelines, which would probably give you better clarity as well. At the moment, I would recommend if you could start the online application process and make note of all the documents that are pending from your side and just work towards it with your per your local guidelines and government regulations as the situation improves in the country.
Thank you. And the final question, we may not be able to provide our final examination transcripts. Will you consider our application on our predictive scores? And can we still apply for a visa?
That's a very important question and very relevant for a lot of markets, including India especially. So we understand the concerns and would like to mention it's the same currently closed. However, we'll be providing our final year students with the transcripts, and we're hopeful that universities globally will also be able to do the same thing because it's a very important service for the students. While I say this, we are looking to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on our applicants and prospective students as well, and we'll ensure that there is as much flexibility provided to students and also while maintaining the admission standards and quality of assurance processes. So should your university for now not be in a position for any reason to provide you with the full academic transcript in a timely fashion, because there is of course the whole visa process and everything, we're looking to consider using your current GPA or percentage average on a case-to-case basis. And for this, you'll find more information on our FAQs page, on our COVID-19 FAQs page on our website, and the email ID that you can write into to ask, get more clarity is internationaloffice@ucc.ie.
We're going to go through now the visa application for prospective Indian students.
So of course now, basis all the conversations we've had, we've understood that September 28th will be the start of the academic term. So for your chosen program, what we've done is we've attempted to design a very indicative timeline and key dates, and this is more relevant for the Indian students at the moment and how you need to work towards it. So I'll probably work backwards so it helps you understand. So if you're required to be start the academic term on September 28th, that means you're required to arrive in Cork 2 weeks prior to the academic term, given the health regulations of a 2-week quarantine. So that takes you up to September 14th. I'm probably going to go on a limb and say, give yourself a bit of a window. So between September 10th and 14th will be a good enough window that you should be looking at to arrive in Cork. Now, for you to arrive in Cork on September 14th or the 10th to 14th window, Indian students are, the visa regulations suggest that you're required to actually apply for your visa 8 weeks prior to your travel date, which then takes you back, which in this case would be July 14th. That's the date that you are looking at, which means that you need to put in all your visa documents and application, VFS, check and verify, everything needs to be put in by July 14th. Now, there is a window of maybe a week or two before or after, but ideally you should earmark this date on your calendar and work towards it. Now, please note something that a lot of Indian students have asked me, saying, when do I book my tickets? I would suggest please don't book your tickets till you receive your visa, and it's also a communication that the visa office has been telling all students. Now, in terms of now, obviously, with July 14 being the timeline for visa application beginning, what do you have to do before that? So we find ourselves in that time zone right now where between now and July 14th, what are we expected to do? And this is where the main work actually commences. And this is where you're working towards the visa application. So there are a few stages you still need to complete. that would be, one would be you need to complete the application online, the visa application online. Again, you'll find these details on INIS or DFA website on what those online application, what will it look like and how do you need to fill it in. So it's quite methodical. If you've applied for a bank loan, you would have to work towards making sure that your bank loan is approved. You would be required to pay, because you would be required to pay up to 50% of the gross fee, which is before scholarship at the time of visa application. You'll have to go through all police verifications, as per guidelines. And for those of you who are, of course, waiting for the final results, you can make your visa application, as Tariq had mentioned, under the approval in principle scheme. And once you receive your final results, you can update the visa office and they'll be able to process your application. During this time, if you do receive a confirmation from the university that they've made your conditional offer into a full offer, you can probably submit those documents to the VFS to help with the process. So essentially, these are the timelines that you'll be looking at. And so take a note of it. And if there are any further queries, my email ID is there on the slide as well. Feel free to get in touch with me.
And the next roadmap that we're going to look at is for prospective Chinese students. So I am going to invite in my colleague here, Haibo, to talk about this.
A lot of the elements that were covered by my colleague Vati for the India prospective students would actually apply to Chinese applicants as well. But still, because from country to country, it's slightly different. So I'm going to just quickly go through the roadmap and highlight several dates that I think our offer holders should bear in mind. So as you all know that the deadline of our postgraduate program has been extended to the end of June. So the first date you should remember is June the 30th. And for those who are still making mind of whether we want to come to CUBS and do a postgraduate study, this is the date that you should submit your final application, where you would have time to submit other supplementary documents, but end of June is the time that you really need to get your course application in first. And then we are moving to the next date is the July the 13th. And oh, by the way, before that, the end of June is also the date for you to submit the application to our processional language programs. And this is for the offer holders who need the language courses, and this is the date that you should keep in mind. And July the 13th will be the starting date of our processional courses. So we have two processional courses available at the moment. We have the professional course provided by our language center, and we also have the course provided in China, which is called the University English Bridge Program, Bridge Course, UEBC. So both start from July the 13th. And then the next date is August the 1st. So this is the deadline that we believe that you should pay your full tuition fee. And we recommend that students to use our online fee paying portal called TransferMate. And some of the students, I believe, have used it already. And just remember that you will receive a receipt, okay, within 2 or 3 days when you made the payment. And please keep the receipt safe, as you will need it as part of your visa application package. And also for August the 1st, I think this is a date that you should also start to submit your visa applications. So, so for the conditional offer holders, obviously you are still doing your processional course, but you can still use your conditional offer together with your processional course offer letter to go and submit your visa application. And typically for Chinese students, the Irish visa application would take 4 working weeks. So that's roughly 1 month's time. So I really recommend you to start visa applications as early as possible. And then the August the 17th is for those for the students who attend the processional courses. This is the date that you will roughly receive your final results. Okay, so keep this in mind, and then your conditional offer will be replaced with a full offer. And so then it's very everything goes well. Then September 14th time, I believe you should arrive, because we'll go through 2-week self-quarantine as per requested by the HSE for the COVID-19. And then the term will start on the September the 20th, as my colleagues have explained. It will be a blended learning. And of course, if you have any question that's specific to your own situation, please feel free to contact me or any of my colleagues in Beijing and the Shanghai offices. You will see the WeChat codes on the screen, so please free to scan it with your mobile phone.
So just the next slide there is for prospective students who are on the call from Middle East and Africa. And I'm going to invite my colleague Tarek back on here to talk through this slide.
As you realize by now, the application process for student visa to Ireland is different from one region to another. So normally in certain regions it will take 4 weeks, in other regions will take 8 weeks, and in extreme circumstances for some countries that they're really far away, it will take up to 10 weeks. So in terms of Africa, if we look at Africa, so West Africa, we have one embassy, which is based in Nigeria, in Abuja, Nigeria. And that embassy will service the whole of West Africa, especially students from Ghana. They can use the VFS method to send their application. So therefore, it will take a minimum of 8 weeks. So you have to bear in mind. So your deadline for applying for visa, if you are located in West Africa, is July the 10th. You have to give yourself some time. And technically, frankly speaking, like we have a lot of time. There is a lot of time right now to gather your documents and at least start submitting your application online, completing your application online. If we look at East Africa, it's a different story. And the reason why, it's number one, we have many offices in different countries. So we have an office in Ethiopia, in Uganda. We have another office for visa applications in Kenya, and I think in Tanzania as well. So that's the great news about East Africa. And also the volume of students that are traveling to Ireland on a yearly basis. What we have seen an increase of almost 300% in West Africa, but East Africa is an emerging market for us. So for students applying from East Africa, what we've been assured that it will take up to 4 weeks for visa to be processed. This is similar to the Middle East as well. All students from the Middle East, they all apply, like whether they are in Saudi Arabia or Oman, everyone needs to submit application with the visa office in Abu Dhabi. And the method of doing so, they need to go through the VFS method. So September 14th this is where we are hoping to have you here for quarantine, for 2 weeks quarantine. And September 28th is the start of the term. That's all from us today. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was an informative webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We have a team here that can answer your questions anytime. Thank you very much.